Hey everybody, On the Run with Beards and Dunn is back for another episode, and hey Beards, you're looking good. I hear how's your knee feeling?
Well, it still hurts like heck if I'm up on it. You know, I can't put any weight on it. But the good news is I went in for my blood test yesterday, and they wanted to make sure that the infection is completely gone. Good news there, so it is. I go in fact, when we're done with our podcast this morning, I go in for my pre-op physical. And a week from today, I get my new knee in, so I can hardly wait. It's been a long 2 months without one.
Oh, Beards, I'm excited for you because that's good news. You know, no sign of infection. So moving forward, rather than kind of just spinning your wheels.
Now, how about you?
Oh, my crash was 5 weeks ago yesterday, and I actually got my new bike, and so I was out just test riding it. My wife Karen is lovingly not letting me ride my bike, and we're going to wait another week to make sure I'm healed up good and all that. But I'm just kind of in the neighborhood. And I went down to where that dog was. And there he was in his front yard. And he saw me coming. I'm not making this up. He started yapping, barking. And I got closer and closer. And I noticed he's on a leash.
Oh,
he's
good.
on a leash now in his front yard. And there was a car parked there with a guy sitting in it in the driveway. And so I pulled in next to the car. And the guy rolled down his window. And I go, hey, is that Dexter? Because I knew the dog's name was Dexter. And he goes, yeah, it is. And he goes, I just stopped to see how he's doing. I said, I ran into him 5 weeks ago, and I just wanted to see if he's okay. And he goes, oh my gosh. He goes, how are you doing? And I said, well, 5 broken ribs and a lacerated spleen. I said, it could have been worse. and the guy says, oh, that's the guy seemed, concerned more about me than about the dog. And I said, well, are you the owner? And he goes, well, yeah. And I said, well, I'm Mike. And he said, well, I'm Don. And we bumped knuckles, And I said, I don't have anything against the dog. I said, you know who I get mad at, don't you? And he goes, no. And I go, the owner. And I said it nicely. I said, look, all I ask, I don't mind dogs at all. You got to keep him. If he's going to run on the road, I said, I grew up on a farm and we lost a few dogs that were too dumb to stay off the highway. We try to keep them in the yard, but sometimes dogs just, I don't know, their instinct.
Well, you lost a few cows too getting hit by cars.
Yeah, we did. And cows aren't any smarter than dogs. But anyway, inside, I said, look, you got to keep him on the leash if he's outside or, because it's not his fault. He thinks I'm a deer, going by his house and he's going to run me down or something. And the guy said, yeah, yep. Okay. And he was very nice. He was contrite. And I said, well, have a nice day. And I rode off. And so that's that, I hope. The dogs came out of it better than I did. But let's move on here. We do have a guest, and I'm excited about this because last week we had my old coach from college, Jay Dirksen, on, and I really enjoyed that, to reminisce with Jay. And I hadn't talked to him for a long time. And it was just so good to rekindle that relationship, talking to him. And he actually said, Mike, call me anytime because he and I are yappers and we love talking about the old days and stuff. And today we have your old coach, Coach John Fulkrod. And I've heard about Coach for years and years from you, but I've never had the pleasure of meeting him. So I'm finally getting this opportunity. And so welcome on to our little episode here, Coach. But I'm going to turn it over to Dick now and kind of explain who you are and why we have you on our show.
Well, thanks, Dan. And Coach, this is such an honor. And I'm just giddy that we're able to come on. We go way back. And, I remember the first time I met you, I think I came down to look at the school. And if I remember right, one of the counselors or something said, yeah, the chemistry teacher, Dr. John Fulkrod, he's also the track and cross country coach, would like to talk with you. And I guess that, when you fill out a form to go, you put I ran track and cross country. And I remember, Coach, you said, gosh, I'd love to have you come out. And I remember after talking to you, I just could feel the fire in your belly. And I'm going to fast forward just real quickly to when you retired a few years ago. And when you retired, you still had that fire burning in your belly. And there's not a lot of people that can say that for doing something that they loved and did for such a long time. So, Coach, thanks for coming on with us today.
Well, it's an honor to be on with you. Thank you very much for having me.
And so, Coach, I heard that you were the first faculty member to kind of sign up when the school opened back in, was it 1971?
That's correct. Yeah, I was the first one to actually sign a contract. They'd interviewed a few other people, and I had kind of an odd interview. I met Ed Frederick at a truck stop outside of Ames, Iowa, where I was for lunch, and it was an odd interview because when I'd written my application up there, I told him that all of the coaching and competing I had done, that was part of my resume.
Sure.
And I remember that he was saying we're converting a 6-month live-in school for agriculture into a 9-month college, 2-year college for agriculture. And we have sports in the fall and winter, but the students weren't here in the spring. And to be members of the Minnesota Community College Conference, we need a spring sport. And we're trying to decide between baseball and track. And he asked if I'd be interested in starting a track program. And of course, obviously, I couldn't believe my ears. And,
right.
And we spent more time actually talking about that than my teaching chemistry.
I've got a question, Coach. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah.
Were you a competitive athlete in high school and college?
I didn't catch that, Mike. I'm sorry.
Were you an athlete from high school and into college? And,
yeah,
and I know you still run to this
I
day. But
I was a pretty decent cross-country runner, and I played basketball, and I ran track, mile and the 880 mostly. And I went to college, and I was looking for a school where I could run track, obviously, but wanted to also get a shot at basketball. And so I ended up going to a real small school in Illinois called Eureka College, and they did not have a cross-country team. And believe it or not, at 140 pounds, some of the guys said, "Hey, we only got 26 guys. Why don't you come out for football if you're going to play basketball and run track?" So I didn't even know how to put the pads on when I went.
It sounds like me.
That's amazing. Do you remember your times at all, Coach, from the high school and
Well,
college?
I was down around mile. I was under 5, and
wow.
I was down around 2 minutes flat in the 880, and I picked up quite a bit of speed in college, and I split 51 or so in the 4x440 relay. Not great, but considering the little bit of running and training we did, why I reflect back on it and I think, hey, that's pretty good on a cinder track with running 5-6 miles a week max.
Right. Well, Coach, and I know you are such a competitive person. I remember, like, during the noon hour, just about every day back at the University of Minnesota-Waseca, you and a bunch of the other teachers, you'd always have a pickup basketball game. And I remember going over there, man, you had them elbows flying. I mean, you were going for the NBA title, it seemed like.
Yeah, I played a fairly decent level of basketball till I was about 48.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to where I couldn't jump as well because I was experimenting with a lot of distance running myself. So.
Sure. And Coach, so, as you know, I wasn't the greatest student in the world. And you really, I can remember I had chemistry with the other chemistry teacher that was there. I don't recall his name. And I remember I flunked. And so my counselor was,
Goulden?
No, that was the chemistry teacher.
Oh, Prabhu. Rowdy, I'll bet.
Yeah. And so my counselor came to me and says, listen, you got to retake it. And we're going to have, Coach Fulkrod be your teacher. And I remember you coming up to me and saying, Dick, you're going to be in my class, but you're not getting a free pass. You're going to have to earn it. And Coach, I remember if I'd go home on the weekend, I taped the periodic table to my steering wheel and remember it. And I tell you, I think I got a C in the class, but I was so proud that I passed your class. And like I said, you didn't give me any breaks. I mean, I had to earn that C, and that C for me was pretty dang good.
Well, when I graded test, I was blind to the name on top of it.
Yeah. And
you don't hear that in college. A lot of times those athletes get the My dad used to joke about basket weaving and
Yeah.
courses like that to keep them eligible. But, Jay Dirksen did the same with us. Mike and Mark Bills and I went to a little country school, and algebra was like a foreign language to me. And the Bills weren't, mathematical prodigies either. And Jay would have us over at his house at night and tutored us on algebra to help us get through that. I mean, it was bonehead algebra 1. It was high school algebra, but it was just kind of a mystery to us. And Jay would ply us with Coca-Cola. We'd sit there because we were so darn tired from running so much. And then, but you coaches, I think that's what separates. When Dick mentioned fire in the belly, when you take that interest in your athlete, it's not just what can he do for me, but I kind of hear what can you do for them. It's a two-way street. You want them to give you their best effort, but you're there to kind of reciprocate.
Well, absolutely.
They need it in hand.
And I know when I got there, I wasn't running a lot, but that was when Coach had me starting to increase my weekly mileage, and I was running pretty much every day and sometimes twice a day. And I started seeing, improvements, right away. And I'll never forget this. And Coach, I don't know if you remember this at all, but when I do motivational talks, I talk about this story all the time. But I remember it was during cross country season, and I think everybody else had gone in, and you were timing me doing like 200s or 400s along the edge of a cornfield, and we got all done, and we walked back into the locker room, and I remember you put your arm around my shoulder, and you said, I get choked up about this. And you said to me, you go, Dick, he says, I really believe you can become as good of a runner as you want to be. And I never, ever forgot that. And there were many times after college, when I was pursuing to see how good I could become, that I thought about, just giving up on it. And I remember what you told me. And that's something I'll never forget as long as I live. So I can't thank you enough for that, Coach.
Yeah, well, I remember the conversation too, and I can tell you honestly what I kind of felt like was I think I mentioned the marathon at that point,
right?
And I believe that I was thinking, yeah, he can probably break 220, maybe even 215. But if you would have told me you were going to run 208.54, I would have said he is not fast enough to do that in a mile.
Coach, I would have said the same thing. And I got to say, I think I think your gray hair came a lot quicker than it would have because of me. Some of the things I put you through when I was an athlete there, between being an athlete and being a student there. And I'll never forget, Coach, a lot of people don't believe this, but, we didn't have a track there, but we had that community track in downtown Waseca, and it was a cinder track. And I'll never forget this. It was a Friday afternoon, and we had our big, track meet that we hosted.
Yeah, we were having 8 or 10 teams come in.
Yeah, the next day. So you were down there chalking the lanes. You had to chalk the lanes, and I was down there kind of helping. And I remember you were at one end, and I was at the other. And all of a sudden I hear, Beardsley, get the hell over here. So I run. I go, yeah, Coach, what do you need? He goes, did you make up that dairy science class test when you were at the indoor nationals? I go, I don't think I did. He goes, and Coach goes, well, you're ineligible. Get the hell out of here. So I run back to the school, and Coach, remember Jim Headington?
What's that?
Remember high jumper Jim Headington?
Well, you and Jim Headington somehow figured out John Stoddard's phone number.
So Coach, here's what we did. So, I was in good with all the janitors and stuff, and it wasn't Gordy. It was the guy that was on in the nighttime, and we tracked him down, and he opened up Dr. Stoddard's office for us. And I remember he was a single guy, and I knew we always knew he dated lots of gals. So we opened up his desk, and we found this little black book with all these girls' names in it. And phone numbers. So we started going down. I started calling, and is John Stoddard there? Nope. Finally, about the fifth one, yeah, he was there. So I go, and I told him what the deal was. He goes, and I remember he was a big track enthusiast, if I remember right.
Well, yeah, a lot of the faculty would come out and help run the meet
Right.
because we didn't have money to hire officials
No,
or anything.
no. So he says to me, he goes, you be at my office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and I'll give you the test. So the rest of the guys in the track team, man, I must have drank a dozen Coca-Colas that night and stayed up all night.
You stayed up all night, didn't you?
I stayed up all night. They were quizzing me, and I went in the next morning. I took the test, and I got an 85, so I passed. I think he called you and said, hey, Dick passed. He's eligible. But I remember you were still not real happy with me. So I remember that day. I don't know what events I was scheduled to run, but I remember, I don't know which order. I remember I ran the 5K, the 10K, the steeple, and the mile. And I'm not bragging, but I was fortunate. I won them all. And I thought maybe that'll get me back on Coach's good graces again.
I knew we weren't going to have a lot of competition in the longer stuff at the level you were at.
Yeah.
And so we kind of looked at it that the morning would be the 10K and the steeple right around noon. And those would just be like a morning workout. And I had no idea that you'd go out and run 32 minutes in the 10K. I was thinking I jogged through into a 34 or something.
Right.
Win it as easy as possible. And I don't know how many times you'd run a steeple. Maybe that was the first time.
It was the first time.
Yeah. And you had a pretty good time.
Yeah, I think I 9 something.
And then I was, because your times were so good, I wanted to pull you from the afternoon events. And
yep.
You said, no, I can do them. So more power to you. And you won them all. And you had some pretty good times in the afternoon events.
Yeah. And if I remember right, the last event I ran was the mile. And I think I just outleaned, was it Steve Oswinkle or something from Rochester?
Yeah. I don't remember the guy.
Yeah, I
don't remember who he was.
Yeah, I think that's who it was. Well, Coach, I want to back up just a little bit because, you've been such a wonderful mentor to me and coach and teacher and stuff. But right along your side for 60 plus years has been your wife, Linda. And, gosh dang it. I know she didn't do the coaching, but boy, she was right there alongside you. And I remember you and her having, our teams over for meals and stuff. She was at all of our cross country races, all of our track races. And she's pretty special person, isn't she?
Yeah, she's absolutely wonderful wife. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so that's a memory that I'll always remember also. So Coach, that first year when I came there, the top runner on the team, and unfortunately Keith has passed away, but Keith Hausman.
Yep.
And I remember we qualified for the national meet that fall over in Rochester. Now, Here I was, a guy that had never qualified in high school for the Minnesota State meet. And now all of a sudden I'm running in this national meet and I ran like crud. I was so gosh dang nervous and I just wasn't myself. And I remember getting done with that race and thinking, I'm never going to ever let myself get that nervous before a race again. So even though I didn't run very well, I learned a good lesson that day. That's for sure.
Yeah, we sort of surprised everybody that junior college cross country track was kind of in the heyday there. And
right.
That was kind of the heyday of it. And there was like in the regional meet, I think like 25 teams.
Right.
And I had no idea that we'd go into that regional meet and finish third.
Yes.
I didn't know how good the North Dakota schools were, the Wisconsin schools. I knew we were going to lose to Golden Valley and Rochester, but I had no idea that we'd beat everybody else.
Coach, I
remember Hausman had a great race that day.
Yes, he did.
He was fifth in the region, and the 4 guys ahead of him were all Americans.
Wow.
Yeah, and if I remember right, you were like 12th and somewhere around 12th, and Owen Dickey was not too far behind you, and then we kind of had 4 other guys who were pretty much equal, and I don't remember how they placed, but Abrahamson and Rich Meyer and Dave
Yes.
Burton.
Yeah, that was quite the time. So then the following year, I don't think we qualified as a team, but Owen and I qualified for the national meet out on Long Island.
Yep.
So Coach, me and Owen fly out to Long Island, and Coach rented a car. Well, I don't know if it was the day before the meet or 2 days before, but somehow Coach let me and a couple of country bumpkins take the car into New York City to do a little, buy something for our girlfriends and do a little sightseeing. So I'm driving the car, and Owen has got the map out and stuff. And so we get into downtown New York City, and we're trying to find a place to park. And I turned down this one street, and gosh, there's no cars parked on it. There's no signs that say no parking. I said, Owen, let's just park here. So he said, yeah, good idea. So we did. We went out and we bought some stuff for our girlfriends, went back, put them in the back of the car, and, did all the sightseeing stuff. Well, now it's getting kind of late in the day, and we're walking back towards our car and thinking we got to get back. And we get back to the street where it was, and it was gone. And I go, Owen, are you sure we're on the right street? He goes, yeah. He goes, a car was parked right there. I go, that's what I thought. So now we're thinking, what the heck are we going to do? And of course, back then we didn't have cell phones or anything. So we're walking down, I think, like Fifth Avenue, and on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden this tow truck comes by, and he stopped at a stoplight. I go, Owen, gosh dang, that looks like our car on the back of that tow truck. And I go, Owen, it is, because I said, there's our gifts in the back window. So I run up to the guy, and it was a young Puerto Rican fella that was driving the truck. And I go, sir, hey, that's our car. I go, do you mind just pulling around the corner and dropping it off? He goes, sorry, guys. He goes, listen, I can't do that. But he goes, I'm not supposed to do this, but hop in. So he took us down to some impoundment underground, and it cost Owen and I $100 to get it back. We had between us $1 left in our pocket. So by the time we get back out to our hotel, I mean, it's late, it's pitch dark, and we're thinking, man, Coach is going to be ticked. So we went up, and Coach, you were in a room with a few other coaches, kind of just talking about things. And man, we knocked on that door and we walked in, and I'm telling you, we turned around with our legs between our tail, because you gave us a tongue lashing like no else. And we got out and we closed the door, and all of a sudden I just heard this laughter coming from your room. Coach, do you remember that?
I do.
But thankfully, we both ran, I think, personal best like the next day or the day after. Yeah,
you had to make it up to the coach. You disappointed him, so maybe that's a new technique, Coach. Give them a good chewing out the day before, and they'll try to prove that they're worthy the next day. I don't know,
man. So then, Coach, I remember after I graduated, and I was out of college and was doing my running thing, and I was on the alumni board, and I remember coming down to Waseca for an alumni meeting. And at the time, I think the president of the University of Minnesota system was it a President Hasselmo? Or something like that?
I'm wondering if it was McGrath.
No, it was Hasselmo, because I remember. Oh,
Hasselmo. Yeah. Okay. Niels Hasselmo.
Yes. And I remember he's talking to all of us, and he goes, man, this is such a wonderful school right in the heart of Minnesota agriculture. I remember him saying, we're even thinking about maybe moving the St. Paul campus down to here. And then 6 months later, he pulls the plug. Coach, when you found that out, what was your first thought?
Oh, my gosh. It was interesting, Dick. The weekend before, we had gone north looking for a cabin.
Yeah.
We always kind of had a dream of getting a cabin on the lake.
Sure.
And we were also in the middle of remodeling our house, and I remember that Bob Gleason was doing it. I don't know if you remember Bob, but
I do.
his wife was Vicky, who was Pickett's secretary.
Yes.
And anyway, he had torn out the picture window and was in the process of putting a new window in. So here we are trying to figure out whether we're going to bid on a cabin on a lake. We got the window out doing a remodeling project, and the morning paper says they're going to close Waseca.
Oh, so you had no clue it was coming.
And, you know, it kept saying, find a way to reinvent yourself or something. And eventually they did close it. Just like it was like, it didn't matter what anybody said. They had this idea they were going to close it. Now, interestingly enough, Dick, what didn't catch a lot of publicity is the university also closed all 2-year programs.
Oh, they did.
And that's when they converted Crookston to a 4-year school.
Okay.
And Crookston had a very powerful legislator. I think he was Speaker of the House or something.
Yeah.
So, you know, he wasn't going to let Crookston close.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, eventually what they decided for myself and all the other people who had tenure as faculty that they couldn't just let us go, because that would have created a situation called fiscal exigency. I'm not sure I pronounced that right, because Mike, to me, when I went to college, I was afraid English was going to flunk me out. I always thought of it as a foreign language. You know, I could handle the math and the science, but English was tough for me.
Right there with you.
Anyway, the university eventually said, well, if some campus wants you and can justify putting you to use, then we'll continue to pay your salary, and the campus will supply your supplies and things. So anyway, right after that, I got calls from all the campuses, and really Duluth was the only thing I was really interested in. And at that time, Duluth's chemistry and department enrollment was booming, just going right through the roof. And also the longtime track coach at Duluth was retiring. So talk about a situation, you know, that.
Perfect. Well, and coach,
it really worked out.
Well, and then, because from what I heard at the time, that their cross country and track program really wasn't very competitive. And then you came in there and took over the men and the women's, I believe. And I mean, I'm looking at some notes here from, let's see, the men's cross country team. You won 11 straight Northern Sun Conference titles from 93 to 2003, and 10 straight women's cross country titles from 1994 to 2003. That is amazing.
Yeah, and at that time, you know, in the NSIC, nobody had scholarships for men to speak of except maybe Moorhead. Excuse me. And so, you know, we were all kind of in the same boat in terms of recruiting. And
yeah.
But Duluth was a pretty easy place to recruit to, because it outstanding business and sciences and stuff. So you just had to go out and hustle a little bit and try to sell the school. And
I have a question though, before I forget.
Yeah,
junior college had a marathon as a national.
That's right. I forgot about that.
You could run yeah. And I was envious of that. I'll brag. I ran a 2:33 when I was 18 as a freshman in college, and then I ran 2:29 as a sophomore. And then when Dick came to South Dakota State, they said, "Well, Dick's an All-American in the marathon." And it was like, "What? Yeah, junior college has a marathon national championship." Did they do away with that recently, or do they? I don't think they have it anymore.
No, I don't think they have it.
They had it for years and years and years.
I think that's probably gone.
And I thought, well, I wanted that. I wish Division II now, because I thought, man, the longer the better for me. But I know. Can you kind of explain, Dick? And Coach, you mentioned you knew Dick's future kind of laid maybe in the marathon. And so here was an opportunity. Dick, you had run 2:47, I think, at
my first one. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you went to this junior college national marathon.
Yeah. And Coach, did we go once or twice? I can't remember.
I think we only went once because I believe it was like the third year of it, and
I think it was me, Bob
yeah,
Franzen, and Jerry
you,
McMillan.
Franzen and McMillan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dick, I'll tell you, if it wouldn't have been for you there, everybody been wooing and wowing about Jerry McMillan, because he was a pretty darn good runner.
Yes, he
But
was.
he was in your shadow, but still, he was under 32 for the 10K.
Yes. Yeah. No, that was, and I remember it was in June, the marathon championships in Dowagiac, Michigan, and I remember I was pretty gosh dang warm that day too.
Oh yeah, it was quite warm. It was about 80 some odd.
And Malcolm East from Allegheny won it, I believe, and he went on to become a world class, marathon runner.
Yeah.
So, do you remember
the coach at Dowagiac, coach at Southwestern Michigan,
yes.
Dowagiac, he was the one who was primary mover in getting the marathon established, and Allegheny gave him a lot of support. Allegheny Community College at that time had, really top-notch distance people from not just the U.S. but other places.
Well, and they had scholarships, didn't they, Coach?
Yeah,
Allegheny?
Yeah. In fact, when I was at Waseca, there was one year I remember that we finished 15th in the national meet, and that was the highest finish by any non-scholarship school.
Wow. Dang.
So, Dick, what go ahead, and I do remember, I think you were fourth place that year?
Third or fourth, something like that.
Fourth, and ran like 2:33?
Something like that, yeah. I'd have to look back.
So, Coach, were you out in the car following these guys, trying to, I don't know, render whatever advice or aid? I don't know if they allowed that, but
what's that, Mike?
Were you there when Dick ran at 2:33 and got fourth?
Yeah.
So you were in a car following the runners?
We were able to drive the course and see different parts of it, and I would get to a spot and wait for I'd get to a spot, and Dick wasn't too far out of first for a long time.
Right.
And then I'd wait for Jerry Mack and Bob, and then I'd go to the next spot and get up there. So we kind of had it figured, and then we got to the finish line. It's quite a thrill to see Dick come across third.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think you were too far behind number one.
No, I could see him at the end, and
yeah,
Coach.
Right.
So backing up just a little bit. So what also sticks out in my mind with such good memories is in the springtime, for at least when I was there, we would take a spring trip down to Odessa, Texas, and stay there for like a week, and we'd have a track meet against that college down there, and we could train and stuff in the nice weather. But it took money to get down there, and we had the car caravans. But I remember, we would go and we'd load like 50,000 chickens out of a chicken barn into a truck. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
How did you ever come up with finding some farmer that would pay us to do that?
Well, I'm trying to remember. Was there Lyle Bessemer there when you were there?
Yes, he was.
I think Lyle was the guy, and his dad raised chickens,
okay,
as well as some of the other local farmers. And Lyle said, "Coach, I got an idea for us to make some money." So you go over there, and they showed us how you grab 2 chickens, 1 in each hand, and then you stuff them in this thing, and the chickens were going to Campbell's to make chicken noodle soup.
Yes, they were.
They'd passed their prime and layer. Well, I'll tell you, that was one smelly job.
Oh my gosh!
Everybody had shoes on, and they were slopping through the chicken coop.
And
my car. I had 6 guys in my car, and it stunk for weeks after that.
And I remember, we'd be pulling them chickens out all day long, and then you'd find a few of these rogue eggs, and pretty soon you're throwing eggs at each other. But we earned pretty good money there. It pretty much took care of our trip. And Coach, how did you set that up? Did you know the coach in Odessa?
Well, first time I went to Nationals, I got acquainted with. We were staying at this motel, and the Odessa track team was staying there as well. If you remember, they were national champs
Right.
for years and unbelievable sprints and
Yes.
stuff. So I got acquainted with the coach down there, and later on, of course, I figured out that he was one of the most famous Texas athletes that there was, because he won the state high school championship all by himself.
Oh my
He won the
gosh.
100, 220, 440 and long jump. And that's 40 points in the state meet. So that won it. And he went to Abilene Christian and ran on a couple of teams that set world records. And the best guy at Abilene Christian was a guy named Bobby Morrow, who was an Olympic medalist.
Wow.
Well, but anyway, I became really good friends with James, and he was just a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And he just said, well, you guys ought to come down. You guys ought to come down here. He said, you can get sleeping bags. You can use our locker rooms.
Yep.
He said, bring some Coleman stoves and cook. And so
we did. And then I remember one day when we were down there, we took a trip to the those caverns.
I know we took a trip to Carlsbad Caverns.
Yes. Well, so I'm leading the way. I think we almost ended up in Mexico. I took a wrong turn. And oh my! We had CB radios back then or something.
You guys said you'll lead, and
right.
so I drove the last car to follow up. And of course, I had pretty well looked at all the roads and everything, and you took a wrong turn. But I said, doesn't really make any difference, because we're going to come out the same place and it's just about the same distance. So I just kind of let you guys go. So what would happen is you'd go a few miles down the road, and all of a sudden the interior lights of the car would come on, and you guys would be looking at the map, trying to figure out where in the world you were. And I knew all the time where you were.
Oh man, I tell you, some of the memories from back then, and I still keep in touch with some of the guys, Coach, like especially Lynn Abramson and Owen Dickey. In fact, both them and their wives and Tom Hayes have been up here and gone fishing with me and stuff. And and Coach, that's another thing that I want to bring up is, I know you've got a love for the outdoors, and you love to fish, and you usually go back to Duluth, every fall or summertime?
I usually have been going like one time, sometimes in the fall, sometimes in late, early summer.
Yeah.
Kind of depend on our grandkids' sports schedules and stuff when we went, and what would work for seeing them, as well as continuing to enjoy the northern Minnesota lakes that they
right.
They got a lot of these lakes, they're called put and take lakes, and they put trout in, yearling trout in a lot of them, and they put them in and we took them out. Put and take lakes.
Well, I remember a few years ago, you and Linda were scheduled to come over to Bemidji to go fishing with me, but it was too windy and stuff. So hopefully we can make that work again.
Oh, I hope so.
Before we
forget, Coach, go ahead, Mike.
I've got a couple questions, real quick. Coach, do you remember where you were at when Dick ran his 2:13 at New York and finished 9th? Do you remember when you first heard about that?
I watched it on TV.
Did any thoughts that went through your mind?
I said he could run 2:15. I never said he could run faster.
All right. So then after that, he goes to Houston and Beppu and runs 2:12. But then I want to jump to London, because I think that's kind of what, Dick was on the map after New York and Houston and Beppu, which most people probably didn't even know about since it was in Japan, but we all knew about it. But then he went to London, and I don't know, do you remember, were you that?
Yeah.
Do you remember when you heard about it?
Another guy at the end decided they'd just tie for it.
Yeah, Inge Simonsen.
And so what?
Who?
Inge Simonsen from Norway.
Any thoughts in your, did you just, I was just like on cloud nine.
We ran 2:11 that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Coach, of what went through your mind?
Just, how good is he going to continue? He's going to continue to add any more PRs. And
then Grandma's came a year later, or that year, Grandma's came around. He runs 2:09 and misses the American record by 10 seconds of Bill Rogers. Any? Were you? Do you remember where you were at that day? Were you at the race or?
Was that Grandma's?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1981.
No. No, I was not at the race.
Yeah, you were still in
Still in
Waseca.
Waseca.
Yeah. Okay, then Boston comes, and and I've told the story. It wasn't on live, at least where I was at in Sioux Falls. But I had a friend who could get to the television station via phone, and they were watching it from a link from Boston, but it wasn't pub. So I was getting do you remember when you first heard about his and Salazar's race?
Well, I think I might have watched the TV of it.
Yeah, that night it was.
Yeah, my
on.
folks did too.
Yeah, okay.
Just a second here. Somebody just called me on my phone.
But when you run 2:08 and finishes probably one of the most exciting marathons ever.
Oh yes.
Do you remember? I don't know, but it's kind of a. Do you remember your thoughts at all?
Yeah. Well, Dick, I'm going to tell you one of my prized possessions, and I assume maybe you remember giving this to me, but when we had the all-school reunion of track that at Waseca when they were going to close the school.
Yep.
And you came down for it, and you presented me with this watercolor that depicts several parts of the race, and that's right up on my wall. Right.
Wow, that just gave me shivers, Coach.
It's one of my prized possessions.
Well,
I think I could go on and on. We're going to get a little late here, but I'm going to finish up by just saying to this. I know Bill Squires gets a lot of credit for bringing Dick to that level because he really did it. I think Dick had definitely the ability, and Squires got it out of Dick, and motivation and training. And, Scott Underwood was at South Dakota State, and he helped Dick make that transition maybe from junior college to Division II, and kind of kept the fire burning. But, who ignited the fire? And I can't think of anybody, I know Dick talked about his high school coach did it because they needed somebody to do it. He was a smoker, and that's great. The guy showed up and got the kids to the meets, and that sort of thing. But, what really gave Dick the impetus, to become the runner that he eventually did, I think falls on you.
Oh,
I can't think of anyone else.
Mikey, without doubt. I mean, again, Coach Fulkrod, my folks were getting divorced when I was in school, and and it wasn't easy at home, and Coach knew what was going on, and he always, he always took me under his wing and was, very supportive, and I can't thank him and Linda enough for, a lot of the person I am today is because of Coach, and he's just a wonderful person, and Linda's a wonderful person, and they've changed for the positive so many young people's lives, and now Coach is in his 80s and he's still out there playing basketball, running.
Oh, I don't play basketball anymore.
No, that's right. You got a new hip here a while back, but
I am still running. Gosh,
that's Coach. It's just amazing, and Mike and I can't thank you enough for being on with us today, and want to wish you and Linda all the best. I know you're retired now, live down in Central Florida, and hopefully when you come back up to the North Woods here this next year, we'll be able to get together and do some more reminiscing and catch a bunch of fish, hopefully.
Well, that sounds great, Dick.
And so make sure you give Linda a big hug for me. And we want to thank,
I'll give her 2 kisses right after.
I appreciate it. And one last thing. Speaking of your grandkids, how tall is your grandson, Jack? Jiminy Christmas.
6'3".
I saw a picture.
Soccer goalie.
Oh,
they just won the regionals over in Wisconsin, and now they're going to sectionals.
I just saw a picture on Facebook of, I think Jack was in the middle. Your daughter, Shelly, his mom was on one side and you on the other, and he just towers over both of you.
Well, his dad was 6'5" and played basketball at UW.
Oh, that's probably why he's so tall. Yeah. But we want to thank everybody for listening today. And if you have any questions for us or comments about the show, you can contact contact us directly on our website at beardsanddunpod.com, or you can leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or X, all at Beards and Dun Pod.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to maybe leave us a comment or subscribe, whatever. We'd love to hear from you. And I just want to convey, Coach, thanks so much. You know, I've never gotten to meet you, and now that I have, I can see why Dick speaks so highly of you and your reputation. You know, I've talked to Coach Underwood and Coach Dirksen, and they say the same thing. You're a quality guy.
Coach Underwood's just a great guy.
Yeah, and I sure
knew him
appreciate
well back at that time.
And thanks for letting Dick be Dick. You know, what I kept hearing is love, and I've also heard some tough love in there. And that's what people forget. You know, it's great to be supportive, but it's also great to have somebody that's going to hold you accountable to make you a better person in the long run. And that's a tough thing to be. I think coaches, it's a unique skill set that they have, that ability to tell you what you need to hear when you don't always want to hear it, but they're doing it for the right reason. So, Coach, thanks so much. And I look forward to maybe getting to visit with you again someday. I sure hope so.
Coach, thanks, buddy.
Yep, okay.